He was on walking with purpose on a mission to go somewhere. And then when we look at it, go, okay, was he killing time because somebody said, meet me after work at this point and I'll go there? And was he sharing that information or somebody giving him that information in the bar to say, oh, where is it? And let me see on my phone, where do I go? And then as he's walking, he sees a couple individuals, says, I'm supposed to meet somebody here. Where's that? And it's validated and then we don't know.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to True Crime Unsolved. I'm Miles Reef. I'm here, as always, with my buddy Sean Cahill. This is the place where we tackle the stories that the TV networks won't touch. Unsolved homicides, missing persons cases, stories without an ending. Sean, what are we getting into today?
Hey, Miles. So today we're coming into our third week of covering the Liam Toman disappearance case from Canada. This is, if you guys aren't aware, a really bizarre and interesting case of a missing young man who, kind of similar to the Ryan Stuka case we covered before, was out on a ski trip with friends, having fun. Everything looked pretty normal as far as what was going on. And on his way back to his hotel, he disappeared. This took place in 2025, so as of this recording, only a year ago. And if you haven't seen our case breakdown, I would highly suggest you start there, because what you're going to see here is an interview with Liam's father and his stepmom, Chris and Lara. And so the reason I say you should watch the case breakdown is because in this interview, we kind of dive right in. We don't go through the entire backstory and everything. We're kind of assuming that the audience sort of has heard that. And if you haven't, you should watch that. Also watch our interview with Kathleen, Liam's mom, and then come here. And you're going to hear a really, really interesting perspective on this whole thing. Chris and Laura were so close to Liam. These are not the kind of parents that were distant and hands off and don't know a lot about their kids. These people clearly were super duper close. Dare I say, kind of like friends, with their son, which is awesome to see. But it means that their interview is really insightful, and I learned a lot from it, Miles. I don't know about you.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, impressive people all around, and impressive how they're dealing with this, both from an emotional standpoint and also from how involved they are. I think there's some real insight that is worth watching this for, just for that. Also, kind of different opinion maybe than Kathleen gave us about what may or may not have happened that night. So I do think, even if you have watched the case breakdown and you've watched Kathleen's interview, if you're interested in this case, definitely want to give this one a watch.
Right on. All right. Well, without further ado, let's take you guys to Chris and Lara Toman.
Chris and Lara, thank you so much for jumping on with us today. Obviously, we know you guys have a lot going on, and we really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. I think probably the best place to start, why don't you just introduce yourselves, tell the audience who you are and sort of why we're talking to you today.
Sure. Chris Toman, I'm Liam's dad. My son, or our son, was disappeared February 2nd, 2025, when he was on a ski trip. So,
Lara Toman, and I am Liam's stepmom, or bonus mom is what they used to refer me as.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for both for being here today. We really appreciate it.
No, thank you. We appreciate all the media awareness and support we're getting.
Right on. Well, like we kind of talked about before we started rolling, we've been covering Liam's story for a couple weeks by the time people will be seeing this. And so most of our viewers will be familiar with the basic ins and outs of what took place. But we're really hoping to get your point of view of how this whole thing happened, how it affected you at the time, and where you're at with it today. So maybe the best place to start, just for anybody who is tuning in for the first time, is let's talk a little bit about Liam. Because obviously you guys know him better than anybody, and I want people to get to know who he was before we get into this whole thing.
Yeah. And I think most importantly, sort of like, where was he in his life at this time, right? Like, where was he going? Where had he been and where was he going?
Yeah, absolutely. Liam's a great kid. And I say a kid, he's 22. Well, he's 23 now. He graduated from Niagara College in electronics engineering in 24. And then he has a car. He saved up for a car. That was always his pride and joy. And he got a job up by his mom. His mom lives about an hour and a half from us, up in the like a cottage area. And there was a friend that got him into like a maintenance job, just outdoors, cutting grass and then fixing things around the houses, the resorts, or I think 2 or 3 houses. And he loved it. He loved the outdoors. His previous jobs, he worked in it was called Treetop outside for zip lining. But that was his element. He loved golf. You know, he would play golf with us and his brother. We took him to golf camp. Anytime that he would have a chance to come down on the weekends from his mom's, he would do that because his core friends are here. He grew up in Whitby and all his friends. And that's why we're here today. And we're doing this episode in the basement because this is a lot of time that he spent here listening to records. He loved his music. And he would play things. He's pretty eclectic. Mostly, he liked his rap, which he'd blare in the shower at times, and drove his sister crazy and everything else. So when November, I think it was November, he had already planned to go this ski trip because I remember talking, and then we kind of used that as a point, like a pivot to say, okay, he was finishing up his job up at his mom's in December, and then he was going to come back. And he came back in New Year's and had a party here, but then was looking forward to after that the ski. Let me go back to that. After the ski trip was really for him to focus on getting a real job in his field. So,
Yeah.
So it sounds like this ski trip was almost like a kind of like last hurrah before he focused more on moving forward as an adult and kind of like getting a real career going.
Yeah, a bit of a rite of passage, kind of like celebrating his graduation. When he graduated to a love of music, Laura and I and his stepbrother Ryan took him to Steve Miller.
Steve Miller Band, yeah.
Oh,
in
that's
Niagara.
awesome.
It was great, and we have so many pictures of that. But I remember looking over at Liam and Ryan, his stepbrother, and the two of them just drumming, like just loving. And here's he was 82, right? And
80,
or 80,
yeah.
And just the concert was incredible. But just to have that time with just those two. But it's what's important for us is we're a blended family, and we've been together for 13 years. So I met Liam and his sister Kate very early on, and they have a stepbrother Ryan that's the same age as Liam, and those two were the best of friends. He has a stepsister that's older and an older stepbrother, and right from the beginning we were known as Table for Seven. We knew, Chris and I knew right away that our families were our most important thing to us. And we went on a few dates, and then we finally decided that we needed a family date. And I had met Liam. Again, a story that we have was of the first time I met him is I brought him a football, and we were outside throwing the football, and I hoofed it so far, and he came in and told his dad, "Hey, I really, really like her. She can throw a football." But
because you were wearing a dress and heels, right? So, and he was always outside. When his mom and I separated in 2009, so I had a little place around the corner, and so we'd always out front mucking around with his bike or whatnot, and Lara pulls in and throws his football and played flag football. Yeah. That was something that him and his stepbrother Ryan and I helped run the league and coach the teams and stuff because I was just interested in whatever he would participate in, skiing or golfing, and golfing was another of his.
The kids went to golf camp together. It's always important to learn the etiquette as well as the fun side of golf, and they continue to love that. And it's something he's done with his dad and with his his mom and with his brothers and stuff, which is great. It's Liam loved the outdoors. We talked about, the treetop trekking. He loved his sports. He loved, if it wasn't football, it was hockey. He loved UFC. I always remember the two, when he'd come home on the weekends between his jobs, I would leave his dad and him. And if Ryan was home, because he was working in the basement yelling at the TV, at the fighters or the hockey game. And it was really awesome to hear that joy in your kid, because we laugh sometimes is when he was home and he stayed overnight, he liked to cook in the middle of the night and we're sleeping, and he'd go bang 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 down our stairs thinking we couldn't hear him, and then he'd cook food that would come up to our room, so we always laugh. But he was just so joyful and so happy.
We have so many stories.
There's so many stories, and it's nice. This is a kid that has so much to give so many people.
And a bright future. And that's what, tugs not only us, obviously, but everybody else and the support we get, because when you become a parent, a lot of, when you hear something happen to a child, you can just imagine what the parents are going through. Right. And I'm not saying that you need to be a parent to go through that, but that's where, I've noticed as, we become, it was table for 7 when we went out as a family. I remember the waiter came up to me, "Can I help you?" And I went, "Table for 7." And I was like, I was stuttering, "Oh my gosh, we got 5 kids together."
Yeah.
And that becomes our unit, right? And an extended blended family, right? And so, a bright future. Liam's got a bright future ahead of him, and he had so much to look forward to after the ski trip. And that's where we're, just dumbfounded by, what the sequence of events and everything else that has happened. And we just don't want it to happen to anybody else's kid. And that's why we're trying to, we, when I say we, it's Lara and I and Kathleen and others, being advocates within the Tremblant area, which we have great support from the residents, from others, there is some areas that they can focus in on, some safety protocols that, some deficiencies there that they're recognizing. And I think a lot of people, have seen the videos and surveillance. It's not new technology, and I don't think it's expensive technology, but if you don't have cameras in certain areas, it's a false sense of security that, and if we had a couple more cameras would had proper direction or storage, we don't know the outcome, but I know the police would have had a better chance of trying to figure out, where's Liam's last, whereabouts. So.
Right. And that's something that Kathleen mentioned to us as well. The failings in the security grid sort of that they have up there. I have to ask this because it's something that's going to come up, and it's some questions that people are going to ask. And, when someone goes missing like this, because you guys are parents, right? And parents have a certain relationship with their kids. And sometimes as kids get older, they're doing things that their parents don't necessarily know about. And but then when an investigation starts after the fact, things are revealed. So I have to ask you guys, was there anything in the background that you weren't aware of that, maybe he was involved in, or there was some secret depression that you weren't aware of, or anything like that would change the view of where Liam was in his life?
No, I mean, it's a great question. I mean, obviously, because, we knew we have an Instagram account. We text each other all the time, but we also knew that he had a separate account because the kids would talk about it at the dinner table, right? They talk about some photo or something else, right? And if they didn't tell us, we knew that after, and it's a good question because you think, is there some dark secret here we don't know, right? And there has been that discussion. Depressed? No, he was in a happy place, and we were talking before he left on his ski trip. Liam suffers from migraines, unfortunately, and it's hereditary. And we were trying to get together to go golfing. We go golfing indoor simulator because it was January, and we go for wings and golf, right? And we're trying to get together before he was leaving on the Friday. And he was texting me, "Sorry, I can't," because he had we call him a banger. And but as things evolve, you kind of dissect everything. We've looked at every text, every phone, everything else, and talked to the kids.
Yeah, talk to the kids. And I think one of the things growing up that was big for us is that we always wanted the kids to have a party here, so we knew what they were doing. Mm-hmm. And we were very open about just everything, tell us, ask the questions, don't go sneaking behind our back, and then sometimes I always would remember Liam would say something and I go, your dad and I know that. And he's like, wow. I'm like, because we're pretty smart, or we were kids once too. So that relationship exists, with Liam. And all kids are not going to tell their parents everything, but he was close with his brothers and, especially Ryan, his stepbrother, and his sister. Like when he was packing to go, she helped him pack because he was running a little late. The night before, he was in the hot tub, with his brother, probably divulging or solving the problems of the world. But the reality is if something was wrong with one of our kids, they would talk to a brother or sister. And if it was really like, I got to break this trust or whatever, if they were worried, they would be coming to us, and then our immediate attention if
Yeah.
something had to be done was, you get him, get the other parents involved. So
Yeah, and then and we
Yeah.
also just add, and we also, Shireen is a close friend of Liam for years, and she would come over with Liam and known Liam, well, we got to know her, I think, through high school, but they had a history before that, and so if there's something going on that they weren't comfortable with family, she would have came forward, right? And we've got to learn, with Shireen a lot through the years, and I know Kathleen's close with Shireen and Katie, so anything that we could, even just come out and say, is there something there, like to give us something to help us maneuver this? And we haven't found it. We haven't found
Right.
it.
Let me
Right.
ask you this, if I may. So there's, it seems pretty clear that there was nothing currently secret, going on in the background, either mental health wise or troubles. But here's kind of a different version of that: was Liam the kind of guy who would get in trouble, like would sought out risk or like to walk on the wild
Oh,
side when maybe he
he's
shouldn't?
he's total opposite. He's risk adverse. I remember, like, we used to, like, we do as a family, we go do a lot of outings. And I remember we went to a water park in Ottawa the one summer, and we went up, the boys, Ryan, Liam, and Brendan and I went up, and there was this crazy high, and we got up there and he goes, nope, not doing it, and I wished I didn't do it at the same time. But then I also remember we took him to Disney, and there was a roller coaster, and he was like, nope. And I remember Katie and I went on it. Katie's like, oh my gosh, Dad, never doing it again. So he was very risk adverse, and he was never, I don't think he's ever been in a fight in his life.
no.
And on the opposite, he's very sociable and liked. People that we found out through that we've never met have sent us supporting messages that have worked with them, or reported, like it was his boss or whatever, said, great kid, smart, witty. And that's where we're challenged with, if he was confronted, and we believe, and that's Lara and I, and that's what happened to him was not under his own. He didn't disappear on his own accord. Somebody was involved.
Yeah.
And so if somebody was saying, if it was a mugging, he would just, what do you need? Right? Like, here's your, he's 5'9", $132. He's a talker, not a fighter. And he's not a loudmouth. Don't get me wrong on that. He's sociable. But if there was some confrontation, he would, try and de-risk that. Right. And so that's where, the first thing that when we got the call was 3:00 in the morning, he's out at a bar. And then, like, we've all been there, but then when we went to Mont-Tremblant, those bars were open every day till 3. And that's kind of a bit of that après lifestyle, ski lifestyle. And I get that. Like, we saw it. We'd be up and we'd see, hordes of young adults coming back, having parties, everything else. But that was one of the first things when we're like, 3:00, what's he doing? And then we saw the video, and he's out there by himself, and you could see him. He's walking, what we say, walking with purpose. He's not stumbling around. Obviously, he's had some drinks, because we went through his bank records and we could see what drinks he bought. But, that was something that we're like, where are you going, right? What are you doing? And that's where we feel somebody is, unfortunately, we feel somebody set him up, where he went to meet somebody, and something happened at that meeting.
Yeah.
So sorry, Sean, were you going to say something?
No, I think you're going in the same direction I am. So
Let's back up a little bit, right? And let's sort of like, I think, as Sean said at the top, we sort of know the timeline. I think our audience, knows, most people are going to watch the case breakdown before they watch this interview, right? They'll be aware of the basic facts of that night. But let's sort of talk about, what went on that night, so that we can understand what you're alluding to, right? Which is, Liam and his friends go out. They end up at this place, Le Petit Caribou, right? I think they get there around midnight. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And they're there, as you said, for hours. So what do you guys know? What are the facts that are out there as far as what went on at that establishment, and that Liam may have been involved with?
Yeah, I mean, Le Petit Caribou is one of the places to go to, and it's packed. People are dancing on. There's a video actually of him dancing on the bar, and lots of people dancing on the bar. Like, you're in Tremblant, it's what you're going to do, having drinks, meeting people. At some point in that time frame as well, they lost each other. Him and his friend Kyle had
Because
lost
there's only
each other.
two of them.
Because there was just two of them, because their other friend had gone back
Yeah,
to
that's
bed
right.
early. So, you know, there's that socialization, you know, when you're in a bar just with people naturally, that occurs. And I know that at some point, Kyle couldn't see him. And so he ended up leaving the bar, and Liam was still there having drinks. And he went to talk to a bunch of people up at a bar and was sort of stopped by an individual that's like, no, 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 you know, these girls are taken. You don't want to come here. And, you know, Liam, again, not being very confrontational, was like, no problem, dude, you know, like, I'm good. But, you know, the two of them started talking, and then they were seen at the bar. There is footage of him talking with somebody at the bar, and you know, their phone was out, and they looked like, we don't know what they were talking about, just small talk, because you don't know anyone. And again, it is French English. You have to understand as well at you know, Mont-Tremblant, so a lot of French.
And Liam can't speak a word of French.
Yeah,
right?
he doesn't speak French. So, you know, you're just meeting people. You're just having fun. You know, it is pretty wild bar. It is après-ski, 100%. And he's on a ski trip of his life. Of course, he was, you know, having a great time. Like, good for him. But again, at some point, he lost his friend, and his friend left the bar and headed back home and
To the hotel.
which was
isn't far.
yeah, 3 minutes away.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like a block. I look, you know, if you see
Yeah.
the map, it's
Yeah.
really close.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. We are, as parents, did see video footage of Liam just sitting at the bar by himself afterwards, and that was sort of early on in the investigation. And then we see him kind of joking with the bartender, and then she, you know, saying something like, "Don't touch." And then he does this thing. He always does this thing. "Oh, it's all good. It's all good," you know, with his hands.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, he's being kicked out of the bar. What we understand after is they were kicking everybody out of the bar. And we weren't necessarily happy with how that went down, but what we understand from the police afterwards, he left and there was some fist pumping, all's good outside. And he started some interactions with a couple of people that were all standing outside with some girls. They went one way. This is about 3 o'clock, just after 3 o'clock. And, you know, there's not a bunch, but a few people outside that have been kicked out of the bar. And then at some point, and you can see it on video footage, he's leaving the bar and he's got his phone out that he's texting, and he's walking back towards his hotel. So we have not seen footage of who else he was talking to. We've only really heard from the police, because they did have to eliminate people and talk to them about that, you know, what the last conversations were. We also understand that he had observed a fight that had gone on outside. He was not involved in it earlier in the night, and some of those people were outside as well. But again, when he was finally leaving, walking back to the hotel, you can see that he wasn't stumbling, that he was walking with purpose. He was walking back towards his hotel. And so your assumption would be that that's where he'd be going for the rest of the night.
So what struck us when we did work with the SQ, you know, the one after the searches, you know, he went missing on the Sunday, and we were there for 2 weeks, but on the Friday, the lead detective was able to compile with the assistance of the other police resources, the footage from the various establishments. And so the one was the Petit Caribou. And so we saw that, and that's what Lara's mentioning. We saw Liam, he was just sitting at the bar. You know, you can tell it was closing time because the bartenders were just cleaning glasses and the lights were on. But what struck us is, why is he sitting there, right? You know, and he wasn't like, you know, like passed out drunk or something. He was just, you could see him having a drink, and he was just kind of looking around like he was killing time to go somewhere, right? Like after, in retrospect, because he would have seen there was not many people, at least in the video that we saw, many people like to
the lights were up, yeah.
You know, he would have saw that Kyle's not there, and everybody just, you know, leave, right? We were a bit surprised with the overaggression on what we would deem overaggression, because the bartender's just cleaning up some glasses, and he joked like he was going to grab one, and she just went like this, and next thing you know, back of his, you know, a bouncer's out. And I get, you know, probably, you know, maybe that's the way that you deal with certain clientele. he's 5'9", $132, a tap on the shoulder at that time, just, hey buddy, let's go. Right. So that was our first bit of a red flag to say, why are you there at 3:00? Right. Like, why are you killing time? Because he was only there for 2 days skiing. Like, he was there, came on the Friday, got there Friday late, skied Saturday. This was Saturday night. And then the Sunday, they were going to be there for the Monday and then go home Tuesday. They only had 2 days that were skiing. So to us, it was like, it's 3 a.m. and the ski runs are only open to 4:00. So you're limited in your window of skiing. So why would you blow off another, and that was always something that we were, kind of looking at. And when we saw him there, it was like, what are you doing? And then that's where he exited the bar, and then you could see him, and that's when he texted me by accident, right? Instead of texting Kyle. So
I've got two questions really quickly before we get too much further.
Yeah.
So Lara, you said earlier, and I might have heard this wrong, so I just want to clarify, that when this individual kind of talked to him at the bar about, hey, don't talk to those girls, they're spoken for. Did you say something about like they had their phones out at that moment, or like after a couple minutes of talking, or did I mishear that?
So there is an image that is available, like on some of the productions that have been done, of him talking, and you can see that Liam's phone, like on the bar, his phone is out in front of him. So, I mean, that image is there. And so why would your phone, are you sharing a reel with a stranger you just met,
right.
or are you, and I mean, again, we have access, and the police have access to, through the iPad, to messages and stuff. And you can, there's certain things you can get and can't get, with privacy and things like that. But there's a lot of content that is available that police look at. But again, what was it?
What was that conversation?
Was it bringing up a map?
Yeah.
Was it? I don't know.
Well, that's why I asked.
Know.
Yeah, is there like some kind of information potentially being exchanged for something that might happen later? Right. Because obviously, like you're saying, it seems like he's waiting for something, and it seems like later he's going somewhere.
That's
it's
right.
somewhere that's maybe not his hotel, because he gets to his hotel and doesn't go in. So then the question is, what happened before that gave him a destination that clearly his friends seem like they don't know what this place would have been.
That's right.
So,
yeah.
Okay, that's why I asked.
Chris, you had mentioned that he texts you, but I believe he didn't text you right when he left the bar, right? It was more when he had gotten back near the hotel that they were staying at.
Yeah, I received the text. I picked up the text the next morning, right? It was 3:16. The Sunday, early Sunday morning. And it was, kids, text kind of cryptically, but it was like, yo, meet me outside. Right. And I could kind of ascertain that, but I showed Ryan, he's like, yeah, yo, you meet me outside. And so when we saw and at the time, I had obviously had that. It was through Instagram, because we were sharing reels. We share a whole bunch of stuff. And so it was probably one that I was at the top, and he thought he was texting his friend Kyle. And we could see on the video surveillance and the investigative stories that we can see him on his phone, and we can see the timestamp. And so we know, that text or the corresponding call after, because I think he realized he didn't text Kyle, he phoned Kyle. And then Kyle does have a record of at 3:17 of that. And so that we can align that, and we can see that it correlates with the video surveillance and timestamps. He's exiting, and then you can see him walking, like you said. He's not walking to his hotel. He goes around the hotel. And so one of the things that is another concern for us is a lot of people think that, it's cold. It was minus 24, or, and maybe he's disoriented, maybe had too much to drink, couldn't get back in his hotel. No, he clearly went by his hotel. And when they found his wallet in March, he had his hotel access card in it. So even if he didn't have his access card, he still had his phone. He could have called somebody. But two things: he's got his phone, he's using it, he's got all his skill, motor skills, everything else. It's not like he's, struggling.
And all the vestibules are open.
Yeah, so he could have walked into the hotel, just even if you can't get in, you get
you're cold,
right? So that's something that we tried to stop people from theorizing on that. Oh, he just wandered into the woods cold, and he crawled up somewhere because he couldn't find his way in the hotel. That's where we no, he was on walking with purpose, on a mission to go somewhere. And then when we look at it, go, okay, was he killing time because somebody said, meet me after work at this point and I'll go there? And was he sharing that information, or somebody giving him that information in the bar to say, oh, where is it? And let me see on my phone, where do I go? And then as he's walking, he sees a couple individuals, says, I'm supposed to meet somebody here. Where's that? And it's validated, and and then we don't know, and this is our theory. It's not, like when we're trying to, as parents, we knew when we got there that when we first came here, in Tremblant, we thought he succumbed to the elements. That's what we thought. Maybe what we heard when I got the call, like we haven't seen Liam in 13 hours. We're like, or he went to an after parties in some chalet. But when we got there, we could see it's a high traffic area. It was very light. They had a snowstorm the next day, but we could tell, we felt as parents he wouldn't be there, right? Like something happened, right? Because he's too smart, right? And then when we see in retrospect all the video surveillance, everything else, it just validated what our thoughts were. Right?
Yeah, I think it was like, we drove through the night, like it didn't take us long to get in the car and pick up Kathleen, Liam's mother, and just drive. Right. But when we got there, it was really bright. And I remember,
4 a.m. Yeah.
I remember, and
Sun was going.
I hadn't even talked to Kathleen for a bit because you would usually text with her. I just remember looking at her and go, he's not here. Like it was day one, and our gut feeling has always said it's day one, but he's also a skier, and he knows how he's skied in cold, like really cold. So he's not going to walk off and, fall asleep in the snow. Like, he was dressed for the weather too. Right. So, as that's your first day there. This is all new. This is all crazy. This can't be happening. But there were very, very distinct feelings inside that he's smarter and would not walk off. And, also that he wasn't there. He wasn't where they thought he was. Exactly. In the snow, cold.
Our
right?
parental intuition, right? And just knowing our son. But then we got educated on hypothermia, right? Then we found out that, in the event that you go through hypothermia, you get disoriented, right? So maybe you can't find your hotel. And then you can have strengths and feats to do things that normal person can't, right? You can climb a mountain, or respective, like a hill or whatever. And then if you feel hot, so there wasn't any open bodies of water. There's a couple of little ponds and whatnot that were frozen over. But the SQ had conditioned us to say, well, a couple of things we look at based on their data points, and we had no data points, that, he could be up in a hill because, they've had, from other cases, they found somebody up on a top of a, cliff, or a pile of clothes because that person felt that they were burning up because of hypothermia and went into the water, right? So the first couple of days, we were getting educated on what we didn't know about this, but then as we saw the surveillance coming back, it helped us kind of put our theories together, right? So,
yeah, and I think it goes back to that something happened, like ground zero is Petite Caribou. I think that is, we keep coming back to that location. Is there was a conversation with,
or a phone call, or a message,
or someone,
or could have been somebody that. People said, hey, check his Tinder, we don't have his phone. So it could have been a hookup, something on there. But, I think that's, to Lara's point, I think that's where it happened. Right?
Just there's something went on there. And
Can we talk about the phone for a minute since you bring it up? I think it's very interesting. And Miles and I have spoken about this together as well, that, you have to imagine a young guy like Liam out till 3 a.m. at a bar. That's probably not a fully charged phone by the time he's going home, right? I know mine hasn't been in those situations. And so, but that phone is pinging on that tower until what, 6:30 the next
6:24.
The next evening. 6:24
is the last time it pings, right?
So it seems, I could tell you what I think, but why don't you guys tell us what that kind of means to you?
Yeah, so no, it's an excellent point. And again, we got educated. The first thing when we got the call, I started doing some of those geo find my phone, right? Ping my phone, right? And he had an iPad, but he had the iPad with him. And we tried to, obviously we made a bunch of calls to it, but then tried to track the number, right? And I remember I subscribed, I don't know how many services to try and locate it. But to the phone itself, and Colin and Kyle were saying, and all the kids are, they don't go out with a fully charged phone, right? It was a relatively new iPhone. But they were saying, it wasn't fully charged. So when you look at it, he was using it at 3:17, and then it was still active to 6:24 the next day, 13 hours, right? So again, back to getting some analysis with the SQ and doing our own research, degradation on an iPhone battery that's not fully charged in minus 24 elements, that battery would have went probably out of service in 2 or 3 hours, right? So that led us also to believe that that phone at 6:24, when it sent its last kind of out to the local tower, which they triangulated with the service provider, it was probably somewhere warm, right? And it could be with him or somebody else, right? So that struck us very, that's an anomaly that, we are having a hard time trying to understand, right? So
And
Possibly even charged, right? I mean, that is a very long time for a
That's
phone.
right.
Yeah.
that's right.
That's right. That's right.
And with his friends calling him, which they did, we should mention, his friends called him several times the next day. If that phone is alive and it's talking to the tower and it's still got battery, why isn't Liam picking it up?
You got
Right,
it.
because you have the last communication from Liam is 3:17 a.m., right?
That's
And
right.
then, but the phone, the last activity is 6:24 p.m.
Correct.
Correct.
We're continuing to work with the service provider and with the SQ on that, because there is some additional information. But back to the, how does that phone stay that, operative for those 13 hours?
Right.
So
And
we
with
didn't
no
locate
communication from Liam,
exactly.
which I think
That's
is a
right.
key piece of
Because
information that
and the kids they all do the Snapchat, the Instagram, and everything else. So we did, we were able to get Liam's iPad, and we could then kind of reverse back to say find his phone, and we got his phone located. The last ping at 6:24 was around his hotel, and so then when we've been collectively back to Tremblant about 15 times. And so every time we try and look at different angles, look at different searches, try and come up with different things based on new theories, evidence, And so when we went the last time in January, we went to the hotel and we went into the garage. And there's it's right next to where the last ping was. It's warm, and I got signal. Like I purposely did tests. We all did tests. I got phone. So if perhaps it was in the garage, not outside, right? So we had also worked with the association there, and they had already done a sweep in there, but that was something that we said maybe it wasn't outside the last ping, maybe it was inside, and that's why the phone stayed charged because it was warm. And the ping was still active because I could get signal even in the second floor. I tried on both floors or going down. So yeah, the phone is still a mystery to us. But like I said, the SQ we're working with the service provider and more information on that. But it is another flag. So
Yeah, and you have to think that the search didn't occur until the next day. Like we were doing the police report, in the middle of the night. So the last ping's at 6:24, right? And we're driving there and arriving at 4:30 in the morning, going to the police, like going to Tremblant, then filing the missing persons report or completing it, really.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, then they start to do the search of the hotels and that entire. So that's a long time in between there for that phone to disappear or move. Right? If it was there. Again, we don't have the facts. These are our theories and ideas, but we have to put those out there, right? Because they're what make more sense is if that's where it pinged last and something might have happened.
Exactly.
And why was it still alive at that time being out that long? And that's where it's pinging. So wouldn't it make sense that maybe it was.
Yeah, I don't know.
We don't know.
And the SQ have said, when we found out through when they were working with Liam's cell phone provider, that they said if they would have had, obviously found his phone or the pinged phone, or if we would have been notified that he was missing sooner, outcomes may have not changed, but they said they would have had maybe a better understanding of that phone being active, that they could have started to zero in a bit tighter. But, there's a lot of things, contributing factors in Liam's disappearance, obviously, actions and inactions. But the phone is a bit of a mystery.
So let me just ask you, because I feel like you just kind of opened this up. What has your guys' general experience been with the authorities, with the investigation? And I'm not trying to be controversial or jeopardize anything, but I think what Sean and I have learned in doing this for so many years is that there's often different experiences based on different places, the size of the police. Sometimes there's different amounts of resources. Well, I'm just curious what your guys' general experience has been.
Yeah, I think,
at the beginning, they were like amazing. Like, I think the resources that were put to finding him in the snow have never been seen before. So, that we are very, very blessed and lucky to have had that search. They started, searching the buildings, and then they had probably 100 volunteers over those first 4 days that were specialized. I say volunteers, but they were police specialized teams. They were, on skidoos. They had the helicopter come in, and they were hovering over. And I remember it was like you were going door to door to businesses, because our friends showed up to help in the search within that first 3 days. And just how low it was. You could see police on the bottom of it. It felt like you were in a movie, but we were very, very, like, the time and energy and police resources put towards searching the snow. And then they couldn't find him within their original perimeter where they thought someone that came, was drinking and succumbed to the weather would be. So they extended it and they extended it. And so, they had roadblocks, handing out brochures, and, that 5 days, that first week, those
Monday to Friday.
That's right. It was unbelievable.
It was, like Lara said, and again, the theory is he's somewhere in a snowbank succumbed to the elements, right? So, they had, they searched 300 meters, then 500 meters, then tighter, and then they brought ATVs, and we would meet in a command center twice a day, that we had set up, and they invested not only resources but their time, and it's tough being a police officer, because I know you got to take this home with you. And I feel for them, because we would meet, and that's what they were trying to solve this. And so, but I think they were under the initial pretense that he's in the snow somewhere. And so it wasn't until we see some of this other additional video surveillance post search that we're starting to think, well, maybe there was a car. There was a car that they couldn't they've identified the colors and things of that nature, but there's a couple other variables there that may have contributed to that, right? And so, and then the phone was obviously, you can GPS or locate somebody by the phone, right? And so one of the things is, after the 11 days, they can't expend that much resources, and we get that. So until they have some material evidence or tangible lead, they couldn't exercise like they did. So we went on, once a day, and then we went home, and then was once a week. And then it wasn't until March 22nd when a resource worker in the village came across Liam's wallet. And then it re-energized the search. I remember getting that call on the Saturday, and they brought back in the helicopters and everything else around that P1 parking lot. That's to us when we knew that Liam, that was a definitive material evidence for us that Liam did not disappear by himself, because he was so worried, a bit of paranoid of losing his wallet, right? And he would have that secured, right? So when they found his wallet, that's when we knew somebody did something to him, right? Or some people did something to him.
His mother told us he often kept it in like a zipped compartment. Yeah. Which it's hard to drop a wallet out of a zipped compartment.
That's right. That's right.
And again, back to, my comment before, if somebody was he's not a fighter, and if there's something, he's risk adverse, he said, hey, give me your money, give me your wallet, he would give it to, right? So, and so the contents of the wallet had his bank card, his driver's license, and his hotel access key. There was money there, and that could have fallen out. But we do know that he was using his tap on his phone when he was in around the village that night. So, but that was the re-energized the search, and then we were kind of the leads. Were kind of generated at that point, and then we started with a reward. So we put together a reward, and we initiated that. It took a long process to get that reward in place. I won't go into the challenges on that. Not with the current Sun Youth, they've been great. But we got the reward in September. And when we worked with other organizations, they reward that, some areas we're saying 2,000, 3,000. And as we feel as a family, there is criminal involvement. We've been counseled, I guess I would say, that you need to increase that amount to entice somebody to break their loyalty from somebody to say, if you're going to narc somebody, it's not going to be over 2,000, right? So for lack of better terms.
Mhm.
And so it was 10,000 and a lot of leads came in, right? And we worked with the SQ on that. And then we increased that. We increased that in November when we had the benefit of the enquete. We coincided that with the release of the investigative series in November to 50,000. And again, so we're trying to entice, because we know somebody, it's tight-lipped community, and we know somebody knows something. So it'd be a great community, but there's obviously a couple of people there. So the one statement I do want to, just say is, why we continue to do all the awareness and work with the SQ is we've got immense respect for the ongoing efforts of the SQ, and we're eager to ensure our son's case remains a top priority. We believe that with the continued cooperation and attention, we will find the answers together. So that's where we are on that. So we continue to work with them.
I want to, sort of chime in too, wrong words, but personally, like as a parent, it's when it stops, like when they're not searching anymore and they say, well, we'll maybe hear from you, we'll connect with you, unless there's a clue, once every 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks turns to 3 weeks. And you're sitting there as parents and Liam is missing. He is not here. And we're not hearing from the police. So are you spending time on it? So your own personal feeling is, and maybe they are, but we don't know that, right? And so we had that feeling a lot. So not that they weren't doing their job, but if they don't have clues or facts or somewhere to go, that was really tough. Like that's really tough, and it's tough for any parent that's going through, whether it's a missing child or any type of case. Because we just want Liam home at that point. And so when the first reward was issued, it did bring in people calling in to the number.
Which we expected.
And then they have to investigate it, right? And so, and we were doing searches as well, so we could layer and just keep it going, like, provide this information to the police. And then things go quiet again. But of course, as parents, you're still looking at everything. Like, what about the EV chargers? Like they have EV cars have cameras on them. Were there any parked there? Like we really truly were looking. Like, it doesn't stop. Every day you are doing something.
And we respect, like one of the things that, through our, over a year, but even the first 2 months, you start looking at missing child cases, and Liam's not the only one, right? And it's unfortunate how many there is, and some are for different circumstances. But the one thing that is not lost on us, we're lucky that we have the media behind us and a voice, because I know a lot of parents are in the same situation and they don't, right? So that's not lost on us.
Yeah, and I also feel, and I've said this all along, is it's not hard, or maybe it is, to send an email to a family every 2 weeks to say, this is your update. Set the expectation for this, like for us as a family. There is no news. I know this is really hard. I'm sorry, I can't give you any.
I still answer every unknown caller thinking this will be the call.
That's right.
So I mean,
that's right.
Like it's just there's no closure.
Yeah.
Well, and I wish I could say you guys are the only folks we've heard that from, but it does seem to happen, I would almost say more often than not, it seems like on this channel, at least, where as these cases kind of go on, people have to really start chasing down their investigators.
That's how we feel. And it's not that they're not doing a good job, because I know they're busy, and there's other cases that they have, and it's a small department.
A perfect example is Ryan Shutka, right? And there's a correlation, and a lot of people have said this case, Liam's disappearance, reminds me of with Ryan's disappearance in Sun Peaks, right? And Heather and the family, I don't know. I know Kathleen has spoken to Heather, but I just know through, and she's been, she was talked to on Liam's story. It's been 8 years, and like we're 1 year plus, and we're just, it's just our whole reality's changed day to day. We're like, so it's just, it's just it's really hard. That's all.
You don't stop. You don't stop, but you want more, right? Back to that question, you want more. You want to hear more, but you're not going to stop. You don't stop every day. You keep pushing, because what if we find that clue, right? What if on one of our searches something comes up, is hacked, or you just don't know. So you have to continue. What if your story is the one that leads to somebody coming forward? You can't stop. You will
Well, and
never
that's where
stop.
these cases get cracked by one little tip or something, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
Well, it's often, someone gets arrested for something else and they want to get an easier ride, or
yeah.
someone's conscience finally catches up with them, or someone
Bingo.
gets a little too drunk and talks to the wrong person, who's then like, oh my God, I remember that. And then they go
Or they
talk
have
to
a
the
nasty
police.
breakup and they finally want
That's
to
right.
Exactly.
decide
Yeah.
to say what they know about
Yeah.
their ex. It's true. And sometimes it can be years later, somebody sees something like this or hears it on, a podcast or sees a news update and remembers something that they've buried. We see that. And that is, kind of the hope. I mean, I guess maybe I should make it more of a question for you guys, but what do you think is going to be the thing here that finally brings Liam home or gives you some answers? Is it something like that?
Yeah, I think so. It's somebody, and again, it's our theory. It's not based on fact. That there's a lot of transitory visitors to Mont-Tremblant, 2 to 3 million. It's a hot spot. It's great. It's a great, resort. Not saying taking that up, and people have said, have you contacted the condo owners and the renters? Yes, we're doing that, and we continue to do that. But we think that, back to our mantra, somebody knows something. It's within that community, the same community that is helping us and lifting us up with their support, their comments, and their best wishes. But in all communities, there's one or two people there that knows what really happened, and we think it's only a couple, because if it was more than that, like when we thought maybe you went to an after party, there have been a lot more people involved. Somebody would have come forward. So we think there's one or two individuals that are responsible. And so we're hoping this is an isolated case, and we know that we talked to the residents of Mont-Tremblant that they're hoping that this is, because there's somebody out there or some people out there that if this is their behavior, that's still out there. So
Yeah. And I mean, we're all connected in the world now, right? So, with the wristbands that are given out and the stories that we do, that's going to lead somebody seeing one of those posts or something and going, oh my goodness, like I heard this. And right. So it's based with that community there, but it's based on being a connected world and having the right person see it or the wrong person see it and come forward and, let's have a conscience. Like,
yeah, somebody's
it's like,
conscience and heart gets the better of them, and just anonymous, and we've tried to promote that, anonymous, and there's a monetary reward. So if that's an incentive, take that, right? And but that's what we're hoping, that somebody, to your point, somebody is induced by alcohol or rage or barters or tries to lessen something. And if you want to know the story about Liam, let me tell you, right? So that's what we're hoping we get out of it. And we're hoping our persistent awareness, the small family from Ontario, we're not going away, right? I know the SQ and through the benefit of social media and that, we've got some good ground strength that will keep this going. We're going to come back out in April for another search. We're doing some more awareness activities that Lara is mentioning about the wristbands and things of that nature. So we'll keep beating this drum. So.
But the closure is what you need, because the ambiguous grief just keeps going and going and going, right? And it's awful.
And we owe it to
special kind of
Liam,
home, yeah.
and
I would say that, and it's not my place to judge, but I think you guys are doing an amazing job holding up in unbelievably traumatic circumstances. I mean, it's obvious that your marriage is strong, your family is strong, and you have purpose, and it's a good model for people to see, that like this is what you have to do. You have to sort of circle the wagons, just like in any traumatic experience when it happens to a family. You gotta grit your teeth and and get involved. And people don't realize that, the police can't do everything, right? So you
Yeah.
have to get involved. You have to
But
be.
Miles, there's no playbook on this,
There's
right?
no playbook.
We're living this, but thank you. It is, and through the support of, our family, family and friends, and we continue, right? I mean, and I'm sure Kathleen's mentioned it also. There's bad days and there's worse days, but then we're together. We do stuff with the kids and family to make it good days. Try and have some of that joy, right?
Yeah,
So,
and I always say the balance between joy and grief, right? Like, how do you balance it? And there are days, and it's been more of late, where you might go a few hours and not think of Liam, but then something you see and you're like, oh, he's not here, or I see you walk away or something. And it's crazy. And the kids were all there. It was just interesting how it rolled in the beginning, and then Kathleen's like, I need Kate here, right? Because that was their other biological child. And then Ryan drove and picked her up at school in the middle of the night, and he had just worked. He was at that time he was snow plowing for the winter before he started a real job, and hadn't slept. And they all got in the car and they all went and picked her up. And then her aunt picked her up and brought her. And then the kids called me and they're like, we got to come, right? Because they were like, oh, we got to be here, watch the house, watch the dog. And it was like, and then everybody was there. Like, everybody was there searching and being there in those meetings for the first 5 days. But the trauma from that, they can't go back. The fact that we get in the car and we drive, and the anxiety you feel as soon as you get to this road that
it's
goes
PTSD.
It's PTSD again and again and again. But you're doing it for Liam. You're doing it for your kid, and we won't stop it. And sometimes we're like, I can't do it this time, but you still get in because you have to.
You have to.
Yeah, you have
Well, I
to.
mean, yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, like, what's the other option? You just sit and be passive. It's impossible. That's your kid. It's your kid. You could never do that.
No. And we owe it to the other kids. We owe it to his family, everybody, right? Like, and so,
And other things too, is that we felt that, back before Liam had disappeared, we had booked a family vacation, and we kept it. And it was different times because of school, university and stuff, that the kids were able to come, but to see the smiles on their faces for a week.
Yeah. Yeah. We did.
It was so needed.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. We had the kids away just a few weeks ago. So
Yeah. But you know what? They needed it. They needed it too. It doesn't mean they didn't have those same moments, but they really, for a week, they were like, this feels good, And I think that people don't always see that, is that life moves forward. It doesn't move on. It moves forward. You still have to go to the grocery store. You still have to go pick up your daughter from university, come home for Easter or Christmas break, but you don't see that.
You nailed it when you said there's no playbook for this. I mean, it's like you have to start to figure out how am I moving forward day by day, continuing the search and trying to find answers, while also being a parent for my other kids, being a spouse and a partner to my spouse and partner, going to work, and at some point smiling again, even though you have this horrible thing in your life. It's a really difficult situation, and there's no set of instructions.
So, Sean, we try and reflect. We tell Liam stories. There's been so many fun times, and music is a big part of our music, and sports have been a big part of our extended family. So songs that come on, there's always somebody that was a Liam and Ryan fishing song, right? When we used to go to a cottage, and I've said this before, so teach them to fish and stuff, right? And it's like, you got to be quiet out there. And as much as they brought their speaker, I said, you can't play your rap. You got to play some soft music. So I introduced them to yacht rock, right? And so we listen. They're like, what the hell's yacht rock? So in the car, we listened to it. So we used to rent a cottage every summer, and we take, because there's 7 of us. Take the kids, I take the girls fishing, and the boys would go by themselves, or I'd go with them. And I remember on more than one occasion, we'd be tooling around the little lake, and there's Ryan and Liam, in a paddle boat, listen to Baker Street or Toto, or just listen, and those are the things that just smile and you reflect on. And we've went through, Lara made me for Father's Day an album with a lot of pictures. And so
sometimes your coffee is in the living room with the book, or he goes Liam has this beautiful room at the front of the house with this light that comes through, and I always, every morning I'm like, oh, he's in Liam's room, but he's just there, right?
he'd have his room. He's got a big window in the front of
Gorgeous
front of our house, and I'd be cutting the grass, and he'll be up there with his shirt off, doing some weird stuff, and he'd never close his blinds. So
yeah.
So I mean, we try and we're looking forward to new memories instead of reflecting on old, and we hope that will be the outcome. But again, we're faced with the stark reality of each day that goes by, that probability is diminishing, right? So,
but we want people to know who he is, right? And that's why we, share things, not just, he's a great kid and funny. You need to know all the great things. He called his Nana every Sunday when he was at university. When he came home, she was around, sort of thing, for dinner, but and he talked to her.
Yeah, it was quite often. I don't know, it was every Sunday, because she'd phone him on Friday nights. He'd be at college, right? I'm like, wow, that's not the right time to phone your grandson. Yeah. But she'd talk to him, and so he always made sure that she was like, we Liam, right? She loved all her kids, but so
and
it just
sounds like a great kid. Just sounds like
the kids are. We always say when they grow up now, they're all like, in their 20s and they have their own lives. But we have so many lately, just so many memories. And, we reflect on them even before, February 2nd, because the kids were getting older and they didn't want to necessarily sit around. Our big thing was we always sat down to dinner, when the kids, again, with a blended family, you have them,
that was always our
1 week, but sit down and no phones at the table. And it was our half hour to just that
was it.
And it was loud and it was, but it was our time.
Because we talk about, that was always something that we, as a family, and COVID, we went through COVID. So they were here housebound but we always did that even prior, had dinner together. Because, kids are kids, right? They, unless the Wi-Fi router went down, you wouldn't see them. They'd come out and when did you get here, right? So, I mean, we went through that, but that was our opportunity to talk about our day, get reconnected on stuff, and then everybody go off and do their own thing. But, and again, this house is not the same. And when we, so can I just take a moment for 1 second?
Yeah, absolutely. I think our audience is going to have this question, so we should touch on it. And that is that the fact that it was, this area was so heavily searched, and then the wallet comes into play like a month and a half later. And right there, right? Not like in another town miles away, but right there.
Yeah.
What did that mean for you guys? And how do you think about it today? Like, how does that piece of information play into this for you?
Well, for us, that just, validated that something happened to our son, right? As far as there was still the discussion of, well, maybe he just wandered off. And again, we felt that wasn't the case. But when they found his wallet and it's not on him and there's no other physical evidence, that just sold it to us. Like, something happened. And that was really, that hurt, because that's when we felt that, somebody did something to him. But, as we were going through the search with Liam, one of the things is, did he get hit by a car, right? If he was wandering outside of the village, a snowplow, did he get hit by a snowplow? Or a car, and somebody panicked, or somebody didn't know they hit him, right? And so, when we did the searches, one of the last things that we had to validate was, in that Mont-Tremblant village, all the snow goes to one huge parking lot. And so we didn't know, when I say we, the SQ in that said, if a snowplow came and picked him up and they didn't know, right? Again, he's not an overly large kid. Maybe he's in there somewhere. So we were monitoring the snow pile, and we would check, and it was, and we'd go and it was like 6 feet. And if you think of it, it's like almost like a football field of snow. And so one of the things when we're looking at trying to, say, go down and say that didn't happen, this didn't happen. Last thing is, okay, should have found him, but it could be in the snow pile, right? So back to the wallet is similar. It could have been something happened and a car hit him or snowplow picked him up, and it may have been in that area now. And it could have been, it did in March. The weather is snow's thawing out, so it could have been, it's finally, it's visible. The other theory is, did somebody plant it there, right, to throw something off, right? So there's a couple of theories, but
I know they have to eliminate people that touched it. But what happens if that wallet is DNA'd and there's somebody in the system, like a fingerprint or, I know that's probably something of movies, but because I don't know that process of how it's done.
Well, touch DNA exists now. I mean, they can not only lift a print, but they can lift your DNA. So it's not inconceivable.
We have requested it. We have not heard. What we heard is there's a lot of people that touched it, and it's not something that we're going to follow up again.
We heard it's a good idea.
Yeah, but nothing further. And maybe it has been done, and maybe it's part of the criminal investigation. And that is the hard part of being a family, is that you're not always informed of what they're investigating or what's going on. That is a struggle for all families in this position, is that if there is potentially things they're investigating and they are radio silent, that they're not going to tell us because they don't want us to interfere either. But
and I get that. We don't want to compromise. There's a request I filled out a request for access for information, and so we expected a redacted, okay, here's where he's met this. All I got was, nope, can't send you anything because of the ongoing investigation.
If people want more information, or if people want to get in touch, what's the best way for them to do that? Obviously, there's sort of like tips and, getting stuff straight to the police, but also, are any kind of Facebook group or anything that you guys want to plug here?
Yeah, no, that's good, Miles. We do have liamtoman.com, and that's an opportunity to share updates and information, right? So it's more of a broadcast. We do have Missing Liam Gabriel Toman Facebook group, and it's an opportunity for people. We have around 10,000 members, I think, as of today. And people, we post things, people comment, but there is the opportunity, obviously, to submit something through the SQ or Crime Stoppers or tips. But we do have on the form of liamtoman.com an opportunity somebody can just type in something, and it comes in, and we have a separate email dedicated to that, and we look at it. Now, the one thing is we can't, because of the volume, respond in a timely fashion to all, but at least it gives us an avenue for somebody, if they know something, to send it in, right? So.
And you can find on Instagram, it was just started just a while ago. It's fine_Liam_Toman. And we post pictures of Liam and the family and the searches that go on. And it's just another avenue that connects and promotes awareness, because we're going to solve this. We're going to bring Liam home. And, this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we'll put those links up so everyone can see them at the end.
Yeah, thank you.
You guys are doing everything right. I mean, I wanted to say that. I know Miles touched on it earlier, but I think people in your position are obviously blindsided by situations like this. And like you said, Chris, there's no known playbook. But I think engaging with the media, I know you guys do a lot of podcasts. You've done the news, at least up there in Canada. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot. I know it does. It's draining, and you guys are doing it for Liam. And I just wanted to let you know. I think that's really awesome. And
we appreciate it. Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Miles. We appreciate it. And again, reach out if there's things that as this evolves, as it recognizes it's a 3-parter or a trilogy. If there needs to be another part or whatever, or we need to respond. We have had other podcasts reach out to us, and there's some comments that go a little, down a rabbit hole, and I will rectify. I'll say, okay, and they'll say, can I post that? And I'll go post it, and they can see it's from my name. And so people go, well, thank you, right? Because again, the misnomer of he couldn't get into his hotel, right?
Right.
A lot of people were talking about that. Don't lose focus on what really happened, right? So.
And that's obviously, you probably know this, but that's sort of what Sean and I are all about, is sort of coming at things from a very analytical and sober mindset, and not trying to
And we would
stir up
appreciate
conspiracy
your
theories.
point of
So
view on this, right? Whatever
yeah,
you guys, as you start to get, through our discussions and others to say,
for sure.
I think they're
And
probably doing the
listen,
right thing.
guys, if you have updates or something pops up, or anything, you reach out to us. We've done that before with other cases. I mean, where we'll do a quick, little check-in, like Jennifer Kessie's dad talked to us about the DNA developments, and we did a quick interview with him and put it up. Like anything
Yeah.
comes up that you want to talk about, we're here. The main thing is that we can help support and
Yeah.
platform you guys and platform Liam's story. Really, that's
Yeah.
what we're here for.
Well, thank you both so much for taking time to talk to us. And obviously, we wish you the best with all this, and we're going to stay in touch.
Yeah.
You were lovely to talk to. I wish we met under more positive circumstances. You seem like a
Understood.
wonderful
Thanks,
family.
Sean. Thanks,
Thank you.
Miles. Appreciate
your
it.
time on
And
different
thank
sides
you
of the
for you
world.
guys, for your listeners too.
Yeah.
Thanks all the support.
Okay.
Of course.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Oh man, what a wonderful family. And
Yeah, it took the words out of my mouth.
yeah.
Jeez.
Well, I meant what I said. I do like to see this level of proactivity with people in this position, because I think, I mean, you and I have covered quite a lot of missing persons cases now, and it does seem like taking the reins to some degree, respecting the investigation and the investigators, and not sort of like trying to run around them, but maybe working in tandem or in parallel, or just not like letting it go into somebody else's hands. It goes
Yeah.
well.
I mean, nobody tells you that, right? I think that's so important. What Chris said, that there's no playbook for it, and that you
Mhm.
kind of just have to figure it out. And that's why groups like Crime Stoppers are so important, and play such a great role. But not everybody even knows where to go, or it's you stumble into a support group, you meet the right person, and they tell you, hey, you should go talk to this person, and
Yeah.
but a lot of people just get left out in the cold, or
Yeah.
they don't have the resources. So it's really nice to see them so motivated and doing so much. You know, Again, we talked about this, after we interviewed Kathleen, but I think the cell phone, the wallet, I think Chris, not to sort of put thoughts in his head, but just having, spoken to them enough offline and everything. I think they're both of the belief that the wallet didn't end up there. It didn't fall out of Liam's pocket, that it was kind of put there. And that the phone was probably in someone else's hands for that period of time, right? And I think that's what we're looking at. I think that's,
Mhm.
we can all kind of all agree on that, right? And it's a question of, is it a robbery? Was it something else? Where did Liam end up? What happened? Was it an accident? This is a case where I am leaning towards that something did happen to Liam. He didn't end up in a snowbank and just hasn't been discovered. I don't know. What do you think, Sean?
I would agree completely. I think, and obviously the family is of that mind too. I think where I kind of run out of runway is who and why. I think that it's obvious that there was some strange things going on in the Petit Caribou that night. The guy that came over and talked to him about the ladies. Hey, don't talk to them. But then you look at that video, and like they mentioned, I mean, like Liam's got his phone out. It seems like it's kind of a casual conversation, and Liam's not pushing the issue thing, like
Right.
where it would escalate. It seems like he's kind of like, it's all good, okay, cool. We're at a bar.
Right.
I talked to somebody. I'm not going to talk to him anymore. And then the way that he was thrown out is obviously a little, aggressive, it sounds like. But is
Yeah.
that enough to lead to a murder or to a kidnapping?
Right. Like they're following up on those incidents. I don't
Yeah.
know if that's the case.
I don't know.
But there's other things, right? Maybe there was an exchange of information with those girls, which Liam decided to follow up on, and then that was like led to another confrontation, or perhaps it was just an accident.
Mhm.
Dark night, a lot of people drinking, people driving. Perhaps something happened along those lines. Who knows?
Maybe he was mistaken for somebody else by somebody out that night who did have a problem
Right.
and was much more drunk than Liam, and Liam being kind of a smaller guy and not a fighter. And it's weird to me too. I think it says a lot that Liam got to the hotel and texted his friend to come out, right? He didn't go in to go to bed. He said, "Hey, come out," which to me reads as, "I'm going somewhere else that's interesting. I want you to come with me." but the person,
so important. Yeah.
yeah.
So
So where was that? Where was he going?
There's a plan, right? It was either like discussed earlier or, he was like, yo, come on, man, there's this cool thing happening. Let's go.
Yeah.
It wasn't, they weren't staying in an Airbnb and he didn't have the key and he was like, come downstairs. I mean, the key card was in his wallet. That's hard evidence, and you could make the argument, people might do that, well, he was drunk. He might have forgotten that he had the key card. He was stumbling around,
And even then, it's like, why isn't the text, "Hey, can you let me in"? Why is
Right,
it? Why is it come
exactly.
outside?
Why are you telling him to come outside? Yeah,
Right.
I think that's really key.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, let us know what you think. Obviously, you had things to say on the case breakdown and on Kathleen's interview. So, has hearing from Chris and Lara changed your mind? Has it added anything to the conversation? Anybody feeling any differently? Let's keep the convo going, and then we'll do another comment react next week, kind of responding to that. And let's keep the conversation going. Let's keep Liam's story alive.
Absolutely. Yeah. This feels like one where the more people thinking outside the box, the better. You have all the facts and the information. Let us know what you think. And as always, don't forget, we have a membership now here at True Crime Unsolved that helps us sort of keep the lights on as we continue to try to platform these stories and talk to these families. So if you really are passionate about what we're doing and you like it, for a couple bucks a month, consider joining that membership. It really does help us out, and we sincerely appreciate it. The other thing is, of course, we're a podcast, Miles. Some of you probably listen to this every week as a podcast, and are like, why are these guys always reminding me?
Somebody is listening.
Yeah.
We do have numbers. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are some of you out there who are hearing this wondering, like, why is Sean always reminding me that I'm listening to a podcast? Well, because most of them are watching it on YouTube. So just don't forget, you can also hear it as a podcast if watching it is not your thing. I think that's about it, Miles, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.
Awesome.